I'm in San Antonio for REITs REITwise, our 2019 Law, Accounting, and Finance Conference. Joining me today is Dianne Umberger, National Tax REIT Leader with EY. Dianne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, here at REITwise, you're on a panel focused on emerging tax issues for REITs. What do you see as the main issue REIT tax directors need to focus on?
So REIT tax directors have an enormous responsibility as a result of the new Tax Act to stay up on all the guidance that continues to pour out of Washington. So they have to be able to digest it, analyze, and be able to respond to and address issues that come up for their company, in some cases to the board, so that the company can be responsive to the provisions as they affect their business.
And what are the main post-tax reform changes for REITs in terms of like-kind exchanges?
So in my view, the biggest change affecting like-kind exchanges is the fact that personal property is no longer eligible for like-kind exchanges. So what that means is that you can have some potential impact on the gain from the sale of personal property, and that in turn puts more of a spotlight on things like treatment of the proceeds from sales, purchase price allocations, how much to allocate to personal property versus real property. Like-kind exchanges do remain a very useful tool for companies. So for instance, they help with cash management, with distribution levels, and with managing issues like prohibited transactions.
Can you talk a little bit about how it's been working with the IRS in obtaining private letter rulings?
Sure. So over the last decade, the process has clearly evolved to a more deliberative one, involving more layers of review, more coordination among branches, particularly with new issues, groundbreaking issues, or new property types. So there has been more scrutiny, which in turn results in a process that is much longer. Also, over the last decade, we've learned that the rulings have become much more focused and limited. So for instance, 10 years ago, you might have seen 6 or 7 rulings within one private letter ruling. Nowadays, they're much more focused, much more limited, so you might get 1 or 2.
And lastly, what about in terms of working with the IRS on closing agreements and how that's changed over the past decade?
Okay, so closing agreements have always been and still are somewhat unpredictable. I would say over the past decade, they have become longer. They have become more expensive. There is some coordination among the field and IRS National as to who's going to take primary jurisdiction over issuing a closing agreement, and that in turn can make things more complicated in terms of how much factual development needs to take place. But overall, they're still very, very important to the REIT industry, and the IRS has been willing to at least entertain them, so we're hopeful.
Dianne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
For more information on this and other REIT news and analysis, be sure to visit NAREIT's website, REIT.com.